"I'm sorry, sir. You don't have an appointment, and we don't offer that collection to walk-ins." The words were soft, polite, yet they cut like glass. The man didn't argue. What they couldn't know was that they had just turned away the founder of the entire luxury fashion brand they worked for. He was the one who had once unpacked boxes, designed every display, and built the name they now wore on their uniforms. And today, he had been dismissed from his own flagship boutique for not looking the part. What they perceived as weakness was, in fact, the beginning of a reckoning. And what about you? Have you ever been judged on your appearance, made to feel like you didn't belong? If you know that feeling, you remember it. And if you don't, you know you wouldn't stand for it. Jackson, West was not born into fashion. At 47, the man who now helmed a nationwide luxury brand had once unpacked boxes in the back of a tiny retail store, steam-pressing garments until his fingers ached and locking up at midnight only to wake again at dawn. He built Varen's Studio, his fashion house, from a borrowed corner of a strip mall into an empire of sleek flagship boutiques across America. But on this morning, he stood motionless in his office atop the Varen corporate tower in Manhattan, staring at a report where the numbers simply didn't add up. "Clara," he said quietly to his assistant, holding out the tablet. "Something's wrong." Clara Daniels, sharp as ever, took the device and adjusted her glasses. Jackson didn't have to say much. She could read the tension in his tone the way others read headlines. "The Beverly Hills flagship?" she asked. He simply nodded. "Record profits, but walk-in traffic is down by 60%. In one of the busiest shopping districts in the country." Clara swiped through the analytics, her brow furrowing. "That doesn't track, unless—" She tapped the screen, zoomed in, and paused. "Unless they're selling fewer items at massively inflated margins." She reached for her phone. "This makes the 17th complaint in the last 3 weeks." "Complaints?" Jackson's voice didn't rise, but the weight behind it shifted. Clara turned the screen toward him. "Customers saying they would turn away at the door. Told the boutique is now appointment only, that it's for VIP clientele only." Jackson blinked. "Since when?" She hesitated. "Not from us. There's no directive, at least not an official one." He scrolled through one of the reviews. A young fashion blogger had flown in from Arizona with her sister for a birthday trip. She had saved for months to buy a limited edition Varen handbag. According to her post, she was stopped before she even reached the display cases. The girl at the front looked me up and down and said, "We're not open to browsing today. You can book a styling session online." It was humiliating. Jackson's jaw tightened. "Who's managing that location now?" "Chad Dawson," Clara replied. "Former regional for our New York stores. Took over 6 months ago. I've tried reaching him twice this week," Jackson muttered. "His assistant keeps saying he's with clients." Clara nodded. "And I've been trying to coordinate a surprise visit with Marcus from regional, but somehow they always seem to know we're coming. The schedule always shifts at the last minute." Jackson turned toward the massive glass windows overlooking the city. His reflection was sharp in the glass, a tailored navy suit, a polished demeanor, but in his mind, he still wore the faded apron and rolled-up sleeves of the man who started Varen with 5 racks of self-designed clothes and a dream. "Cancel my meetings for tomorrow." "All of them?" Clara asked, startled. "Even the investor brief?" "Especially that. And find me something to wear that doesn't look like this," he said, gesturing down at his sleek outfit. "You're going undercover again, aren't you?" Clara asked, though she already knew the answer. Jackson didn't smile. He didn't need to. "It's time to find out," he said, "what really happens when just another customer walks into my store. If this story speaks to you so far, feel free to share it and follow for what happens next." The next morning, Jackson sat quietly in the back seat of a rideshare SUV, having left his usual town car behind. His suit, watch, and polished leather shoes were replaced with worn jeans, an old Navy windbreaker, and a pair of faded sneakers. On his shoulder hung a canvas tote with a cracked Varen logo, years out of production. It was 10:17 a.m., prime boutique hours. The Varen Studio flagship in Beverly Hills stood like a cathedral of couture, tall glass walls, custom marble floors, and a revolving door that whispered exclusivity with every polished turn. Inside, the light was curated, the silence engineered. Mannequins posed at precise angles behind crystal-clear panes, dressed in runway pieces that retail for more than some used cars. But what Jackson noticed first wasn't the clothing. It was what had changed. Gone was the open, welcoming layout he had designed with intimacy in mind. Now, a velvet rope barrier cordoned off the entrance. A narrow entry lane led visitors past a sleek concierge desk, guarded by a slim woman with platinum blonde hair and a tablet in her manicured hands. The nameplate read, Brittany Myers, Client Experience Liaison. Jackson had never met her. He had never approved such a title. She didn't look up as he approached. Her fingers tapped swiftly on her screen in a rhythm of curated disinterest. After a full 20 seconds, she lifted her gaze just slightly and took him in with a quick, precise scan. Faded jacket, non-designer bag, running shoes with scuffed rubber soles. "Good morning," she said, her tone wrapped in a customer service smile that never reached her eye. Jackson kept his voice warm. "No, ma'am. I was just passing by. I'm in town visiting my niece, and thought I'd finally see the flagship. I've been following Varen since the early days." The corners of Brittany's lips twitched. Not quite a smile, not quite a smirk. "I'm afraid we're appointment only now," she replied, gesturing to a QR code framed in gold. "You can scan this to schedule a personal styling consultation for next week." Jackson blinked. "Your website doesn't say anything about appointments being required." "It's a recent update," Brittany said smoothly. "We transitioned to a more exclusive client experience model. Varen is now offering tailored service to premium clients." He leaned in slightly, keeping his tone polite. "I'm already here, and I won't take long. I just wanted to see what's new for the season. Maybe pick up a gift." Brittany's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes cooled. "We only assist clients with pre-booked appointments," she said, her tone hardening. She tilted her chin ever so slightly, the universal sign of dismissal. No exceptions. Behind her, Jackson could see a row of stylists standing idle, chatting quietly by the accessories wall. There were no clients in sight, no fittings in progress, no signs of being fully booked. He gestured casually toward them. "Looks like it's a quiet morning. Surely someone could." "I said we're full," Brittany cut in, her voice clipped. Then, with a pointed glance at his attire, she added with icy precision, "We serve Varen Black members and premium-tier clients. You are clearly not one of them." The silence that followed felt heavier than it should have. Jackson didn't flinch, but inside, a dozen emotions warred. Shock, anger, disappointment. Not for himself, but for what this moment signified. He had built Varen's studio on the belief that fashion was an invitation, not a velvet rope. And now his flagship boutique had become something he never intended, a fortress for the few. He glanced past Brittany into the showroom. What was once a blend of everyday chic and runway elegance was now entirely high couture. No more ready-to-wear. No mid-range collections. In the far corner, a barista in designer black served custom lattes under a chandelier imported from Milan. His boutique had become a private club. "I see," Jackson said quietly. "And who made this change in policy?" "Management," Brittany replied, already shifting her attention to the entrance where a sleek black Porsche had just pulled up. A couple emerged, both in head-to-toe designer, she in Balmain, he in Givenchy. Brittany's posture changed instantly. She stood straighter, her smile wider. "Mr. and Mrs. Langford," she called out. "Welcome. Chad has your pieces ready for fitting." Jackson had been rendered invisible, categorized, and dismissed. He watched quietly as the velvet rope was unhooked and the Langfords were ushered in. Then, without another word, he stepped back onto the sidewalk and turned away, but not before hearing Brittany's voice, low and dripping with irony, aimed at no one in particular. "We can't adjust anyone walking in off the street. It's Varen, not a mall." Jackson didn't stop walking. But inside, a single thought had solidified. They had no idea who they had just turned away, and they were about to find out. Jackson didn't speak a word during the ride back. He sat in the back of the SUV, watching the streets of Los Angeles blur past a window, his mind already miles ahead. His flagship boutique had turned him away, politely, coldly, and with a touch of cruelty. And not because he wasn't a paying customer, but because he didn't look like one. The real damage wasn't personal. It was systemic, intentional. And if it had happened to him, how many others had been quietly shown the door? By the time the SUV pulled into the underground garage of a nondescript office building 3 miles away, Jackson had already made the first 2 phone calls. This wasn't corporate HQ. It was a temporary satellite space his head of internal security had used during a previous investigation. Jackson entered without a word. The man who greeted him was tall, broad-shouldered, and carried himself with the calm vigilance of someone trained in another life. How was the shopping trip? Mark Raines asked. He'd been with Varen's studio for nearly a decade, handling everything from security breaches to product counterfeiting. Enlightening, Jackson replied grimly. Show me what you've got. Mark led him into a side room where a bank of monitors lit up with activity. A woman in her 20s with dark, cropped hair stood and offered her hand. Boss, this is Jenny Ramos, our embedded IT specialist at Beverly Hills. She's been in place for 3 weeks. Jackson nodded and shook her hand. What have you found? Jenny didn't waste time. She turned to the monitors and pulled up a dashboard of internal systems. It's worse than we thought. The appointment-only policy is completely unofficial. No memo, no approval. I backtraced it. Chad Dawson implemented it himself 4 months ago. She clicked again, revealing a thread of internal emails. He framed it as a temporary VIP pilot program, but it was never submitted to HQ for review. Another click, and a spreadsheet loaded on screen. This is the boutique's standard CRM system, but they've modified it. There's a hidden client tagging protocol, Platinum, Gold, and Standard. Jenny paused. Platinum gets instant access. Gold gets appointments. Standard gets turned away. Jackson's mouth tightened. And the tags, they're based on what? Not on sales history or loyalty, Jenny said, shaking her head. Purely aesthetic assumptions. The car they drive, their social media presence, their outfits, watches, even their zip code. And guess who's doing most of the tagging? Mark added. Let me guess, Jackson said. Brittany Myers. Right on, Mark confirmed. She was hired 6 months ago. Background? 0 retail. Used to be a VIP concierge at a luxury hotel. Jenny switched to another tab. Here's the punchline. In the past month alone, 143 walk-in clients were denied entry or service. Meanwhile, the boutique reports record profits despite significantly fewer transactions. Jackson leaned in. How? Luxury price stacking, Jenny explained. Chad's team charges inflated margins to platinum tier clients, up to 30% over retail, on the guise of black label access. They make it sound like an insider deal, but it's just markups. That still doesn't account for the volume, Jackson said. Even with high margins, you can only upsell so many clients. Mark and Jenny exchanged a look. That's where our second embedded agent comes in, Mark said, stepping aside and opening the door to an adjoining office. A young man with slim features and wire-rimmed glasses looked up from a laptop. Mr. West, he said. David Chin from accounting. He's been posing as a junior finance coordinator at the flagship, Mark explained. David stood and brought up a series of files. I found some creative accounting. They're running dual books. The official reports you see at HQ and the real numbers buried deep. He opened an email thread and side-by-side spreadsheets. See these? These walk-ins tagged Standard were turned away. Then David clicked again. But then they were referred to partner boutiques. Jackson narrowed his eyes. Referral kickbacks? Exactly. Chad has arrangements with at least 3 nearby luxury boutiques. Every time Varen turns someone away, Brittany discreetly hands him a card. If the customer buys there, Chad's team gets a fee, usually around $500. Jackson was silent for several seconds. Then, so we're not only rejecting potential clients, we're selling them off to our competitors? Yes, sir, David said, and making those competitors richer in the process. Double dipping, Jenny added. And that's not even the worst of it. Mark pulled up an image. Recognize this guy? It was a man from earlier, the one escorted him behind the velvet rope. Langford, Jackson said. No, his real name is Jason Miller. He's a freelance model, a small-time actor. Jenny brought up an internal calendar. He's on the schedule every Friday. Always photographed receiving new pieces, posing by the glass, sipping espresso in a lounge. An influencer stunt. Jackson asked. Completely fabricated. Jenny confirmed. The inventory he's purchasing is never actually sold. It just rotates. The photos go up on Instagram with hashtags like #VarenBlack and #StyleAboveAll. FOMO marketing, Mark muttered. False scarcity, manufacturer exclusivity. Jackson let out a slow breath. And it's all documented? Everything, Jenny said. Emails, text messages, transaction logs, surveillance footage. She gave a slight smile. I also installed a protocol that mirrors all boutique data in real time to our secure server. They can't delete anything without us knowing. Good work, Jackson said. He checked his watch. Clara and Marcus should be landing in 20 minutes. Send all files to Patricia in legal. Mark, coordinate with media. Going public? Mark asked. Not yet. Jackson's voice was ice. First, I want to give him the chance to look me in the eye. He turned toward the door. But I'll need a change of clothes. Something more appropriate for the occasion. Then he paused. And Mark, call Sarah Menez from the Journal. Tell her if she wants an exclusive on how we deal with corruption. She should be at Varen Beverly Hills by 2 p.m. Mark nodded. She'll be there. Jackson stepped into the hallway. The weight of what he'd uncovered hardening into resolve. His boutique hadn't just lost its way. It betrayed everything it once stood for. Now it was time to clean house. Exactly 1 hour later, a sleek black SUV pulled up in front of the Varen Studio flagship boutique in Beverly Hills. The vehicle bore the discreet emblem of the company's executive fleet. Behind it, 3 identical cars followed. The sudden appearance of a corporate motorcade in the middle of Rodeo Drive caused more than a few heads to turn. Inside the boutique, Brittany Myers was perched at her desk, tapping casually on her tablet. She didn't look up when the first set of doors opened. It wasn't until the inner doors parted and a hush spread across the boutique floor that she glanced up and froze. Her fingers slipped on the screen. Standing before her was the same man, utterly transformed. Gone were the faded jeans and scuffed sneakers. Now he wore a charcoal gray suit, immaculately tailored with subtle pinstripes and a silk pocket square, folded like a designer's signature. His Italian shoes gleamed under boutique lighting. The deep navy tie he wore matched the Varen logo behind her perfectly. The custom-engraved watch on his wrist cost more than her annual salary. But none of that struck fear in her like the look on his face. Calm, composed, but utterly unreadable. Miss Myers, Jackson said pleasantly, I believe I have an appointment now. Behind him stood 3 figures. Mark Raines, the security chief, now wearing credentials open around his neck. Patricia Chin, head of legal, holding a leather-bound portfolio, and Marcus Washington, the regional director who had flown in from corporate just hours ago. A 4th person stood beside them. Sarah Jimenez, the business reporter from the City Journal, her press badge clipped to her blazer, a DSLR camera in hand. Brittany stood so quickly her chair hit the wall behind her. Mr. West. We didn't know you were coming. That, Jackson said, his voice measured, was rather the point. He turned slightly. Where's Mr. Dawson? As if summoned, Chad Dawson emerged from his glass office near the fitting lounge, laughing with none other than Jason Miller, the fake influencer. The laughter died mid-note as Chad spotted the group. The color drained from his face. He straightened his tie, trying to regain control of the moment. Mr. West, Chad said, stepping forward. What an unexpected honor this is. Jackson removed his sunglasses and tucked them into his coat. I thought I'd stop by. No appointment necessary, I hope. Chad stammered something that didn't quite form words. Behind him, Jason Miller began to discreetly edge toward the back exit. Not so fast, Mr. Langford. Mark called out, "We'll need you to stay for this." Around them, the boutique had fallen silent. Stylists froze in place between racks of couture. Customers looked up from mirrored dressing rooms. Even the barista. "Perhaps we should continue this in my office," Chad managed, wiping his palms against his slacks. "I don't think so," Jackson replied. "What we're about to discuss concerns everyone here." He turned toward the center of the boutique. "My name is Jackson West. I am the CEO and founder of Varon Studio. Earlier today, I visited this boutique as a regular customer, curious about our seasonal collection. I was turned away at the door, told this location was by appointment only, and that I wasn't a premium client." A quiet ripple spread through the room. One stylist looked sharply at Brittany. Another backed away slightly toward the stockroom. "When I asked to speak with management," Jackson continued, "I was told I was wasting his time and was advised to go elsewhere." "Sir, I can explain," Chad began. "Oh, I'm sure you can," Jackson said sharply. "Just as you can explain the unauthorized renovation of this boutique, the champagne bar that was never approved, and the so-called Varon Black program that exists in no official documentation." Patricia stepped forward, opening her portfolio. "Or the dual accounting system that we've uncovered. Or the referral agreements with competing luxury stores. Or the payments made to a freelance actor to pose as an influencer in staged marketing content." Customers gasped. Jason Miller took another step backward, only to find Mark blocking his path again. "That's absurd," Chad said, his voice cracking. "Who told you these things?" "Your own records did," Jackson said. "Your emails, your appointment logs, your security footage." From across the boutique, a young stylist with dark-framed glasses stepped forward hesitantly, raising his hand. "Mr. West? I'm Kevin Liu. I've tried to report some of this for months, but Mr. Dawson said I'd be blacklisted." "And I'm Lisa Herrera," added another stylist, stepping forward. "I was put on probation for assisting a walk-in client last week. Brittany said we were no longer here for window shoppers." Jackson nodded. "Your concerns have been noted and will be addressed." He turned back to Chad and Brittany. "But first, I want everyone here to understand exactly what has been happening behind these glass walls." He gestured to Sarah Jimenez, who began snapping photographs rapidly. "This story," Jackson said, "will be featured in tomorrow's City Journal. How Varon Studio discovered and dismantled a culture of elitism within its own flagship boutique." Chad's skin had gone from pale to ashen. "You can't do this. This boutique leads the country in profit. At what cost?" Jackson replied coldly, "By turning away everyday clients, by deceiving those you do serve, by betraying every principle this brand was built on." He turned to face the entire boutique once more. Varon Studio was founded on a simple belief. Fashion should empower, not divide. Clothing is a form of expression, not exclusion. And no one should be judged for walking into our stores. The camera shutter clicked again. "Chad Dawson, Brittany Myers, you are both terminated. Effective immediately." Gasps echoed around the boutique. Two security personnel stepped forward from the main entrance. "You can't fire me," Chad said, desperation creeping into his voice. "I made the store what it is. I doubled your margins." Marcus finally spoke, his voice firm. "Once we factor in the damage to brand reputation, the legal liability, and the loss of future clientele, you've cost us millions." Brittany said nothing. Her hands trembled, a faint streak of mascara running down one cheek. Jackson looked at Jason Miller. "As for you, Mr. Langford, your services are no longer required. Though I must say, your portrayal of the smug elitist was disturbingly convincing." Then Jackson walked past a velvet rope, stepping into the heart of his own boutique, leaving Chad and Brittany standing behind the reception desk, where they had once refused him entry, now exposed and exactly where they belonged. The silence that followed Jackson's announcement was thick and unbroken. Chad Dawson stood motionless. The practiced confidence he once wore like a second skin now peeled away in layers. Brittany Myers clutched the reception desk behind her, her eyes darting for something, anything, to anchor her to. But there was nothing. No protocol, no exit strategy, No one coming to save them. This is a mistake. Chad finally said, the words brittle and hollow, "You're punishing success. I made this boutique the crown jewel of Varen's studio." Jackson's expression didn't change. "Let's examine that claim, shall we?" He turned to the crowd, now forming at the center of the showroom. Customers, stylists, baristas, and sales associates stood in various stages of disbelief and uneasy curiosity. "This," Jackson said, nodding toward the dark-haired woman who stepped forward, "is Jenny Ramos from our corporate IT division. She has been working undercover at this location for 3 weeks." A ripple of shock moved through the room. Brittany's mouth parted slightly as recognition dawned. The new system support girl who had fixed the Wi-Fi last Tuesday. The one who never made eye contact. Invisible by design. "She's had access to all internal systems," Jackson continued. "And what she found is illuminating." Jenny held up a tablet and tapped the screen. Her voice was calm and steady. "In the past 3 months, 372 potential customers were denied entry or service at this location. Many were told to make an appointment, but none of them were ever offered one. They were flagged and turned away based on perceived income or appearance." She swiped to the next screen. "And this text from Mr. Dawson to a boutique partner in Santa Monica reads, 'Sending you another stray. Mid-40s, polyester jacket, asking for the discount rack. Should be good for a base commission.'" Gasps echoed. A woman near the shoe display muttered, "Unbelievable." Another screen. This one reads, "Young guy, thrift store look, asking for men's suiting. Not our crowd. He's yours if you want him." A stylist near the accessories bar stepped forward suddenly. "That was my cousin. I remember that day." Jackson watched the growing storm in the room. 17 such messages have been recovered so far, Jenny said, all referring walk-ins to partner boutiques, all triggering commission payouts to Chad Dawson's private accounts. He turned to Chad. "You were literally selling our clients to your competitors." Patricia Chin stepped in, her voice cool and legal. "This behavior may qualify as commercial fraud and collusion. Our legal team is conducting a full audit." Chad's jaw opened, but nothing came out. "And that's not all," Jackson said, signaling David Chin, who stepped forward from where he had been monitoring the exchange near the fitting rooms. "David Chin," he said clearly, "corporate finance. I've been embedded in the accounting department here for the past 4 weeks." He held up his own tablet. "We discovered a duplicate ledger system, one visible to HQ, the other hidden locally. High-margin black label sales were only partially reported. 30% of that inflated revenue was funneled through private booking codes and routed to a shell LLC traced directly to Mr. Dawson." The showroom had gone completely still. Customers exchanged shocked glances. Stylists looked at one another, as if suddenly unsure who they were working beside. And then David said, turning to the boutique's large video screen display mounted above the accessories wall, "There's this." He tapped the screen on his tablet. The boutique's ambient music stopped. A security camera feed filled the monitor. The footage showed Brittany standing at the entrance with a walk-in client, a middle-aged woman in a floral blouse and a crossbody bag. She said she was in town for a wedding, Brittany said on screen, turning to Chad. "Asked to see occasion wear. I told her our pieces wouldn't fit her budget. Send her to Vintage Vine instead. They'll throw us the usual." In the background, Chad snorted, "Maybe she can find a clearance rack and some dignity." A chorus of disgusted murmurs swept the showroom. Next clip, Jason Miller stood posing with a Varen shopping bag under perfect lighting. Chad off camera, "Hold the bag higher. Look like you actually bought something. We'll tag it exclusive preview and push it by noon." Jason, "Same bag as last week." Chad, "No one will notice. The sheep eat this stuff up." The screen went black. Jackson didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "I trusted you to lead our flagship. Instead, you turned it into a gated playground for your own ego. You bullied staff. You humiliated customers. You turned our brand into a filter and filter out the very people we claim to empower." He nodded once toward the guards. "Escort them out. Collect all credentials. Their access has been revoked." Chad tried one last, desperate move. You need me. You can't just... What I need, Jackson interrupted, is a team that serves people with respect, regardless of what they wear, drive, or look like. As Chad and Brittany were led to the same doors they once guarded with velvet ropes, no one said a word in their defense. Even the regular VIP clients looked away. Jason Miller hesitated. One more thing, Mark Rain said, stepping forward. He handed the actor a manila envelope. That's an invoice. Full repayment for every dollar paid to you under false pretenses. Our legal team will be in touch. Jason took it with trembling hands and disappeared out the side door. As the doors finally shut behind the disgraced employees, Sarah Jimenez lowered her camera. Mr. West, she asked quietly, would you care to make a statement about what comes next for Varon Studio? Jackson looked across the boutique at the stunned stylist, the surprised customers, the empty reception desk, and gave a simple answer. Absolutely, he said. We rebuild. Starting now. The next morning, the Varon Studio flagship in Beverly Hills opened its doors as it once had years ago, without velvet ropes, without gatekeeping desks, and without appointment-only policies. The espresso bar remained, but now offered complimentary drinks to every guest, not just those deemed worthy by wardrobe or wallet. The matte black Varon Black cards had vanished from the displays. In their place, standard Varon Studio cards were stacked neatly in minimalist trays. But most striking of all was a new banner that stretched proudly above the entrance. Everyone welcome. No appointment necessary. Jackson West arrived before the boutique officially opened. He wanted to see it for himself, not just the aesthetics, the lighting, or the restored layout, but the feeling, the air, the tone. And from the moment he stepped inside, he felt it. The walls had been reset. The boutique had been stripped of its pretension. The reception desk had been moved to the side, now a simple guest services table manned by a friendly young associate with a bright smile. The showroom had been restored to its original open-concept design, just as Jackson had envisioned when the flagship first opened. Every collection was on display again, from ready-to-wear to runway couture. No more curated exclusivity. No more gatekeeping glamour. He walked quietly among the mannequins, pause and straighten a blazer or reposition a handbag. It wasn't micromanaging. It was habit. Pride. Mr. West. Jackson turned. Standing by the fitting lounge was Kevin Liu, the junior stylist who had stepped forward the day before to speak the truth. I didn't expect to see you again so soon, Kevin said, a little nervously. This boutique needs hands-on leadership, Jackson replied, and I wanted to speak with you personally. He gestured toward the office that had once belonged to Chad Dawson. The space had already been cleared. No marble figurines, no custom nameplates, no designer cologne on display. Just a clean desk, an ergonomic chair, and a fresh start. Inside, Marcus Washington and Patricia Chin were already waiting. As Jackson entered with Kevin, he gestured for the young man to sit. Kevin, he began, you spoke up yesterday, not just when it was convenient, but when it was risky. That kind of integrity can't be trained. It's built. Kevin shifted uncomfortably. I just couldn't stand what was happening. My parents came to this country with nothing. If someone had judged them by their shoes or their accent, they wouldn't have gotten a second glance. We need more of that thinking, Jackson said. That's why I'd like to offer you the position of Client Experience Director for this location. Kevin blinked. Sir, I'm just a stylist. I don't have management training. I've never even run a full team. But you have the right values, Marcus interjected, and values are the foundation. We can train for the rest. A gentle knock at the door interrupted them. Lisa Herrera, the associate who had been placed on probation for helping a walk-in client, entered hesitantly. You asked to see me, Mr. West? Yes, Jackson smiled. We're restructuring this boutique's leadership, and we'd like you to take on the role of sales floor manager. Lisa's eyes widened. Me? But... No buts, Patricia said, her tone firm but kind. Your record shows consistent, top-tier customer satisfaction, even during the worst period under Chad's direction. You didn't just maintain professionalism, you protected the spirit of this brand. As they discussed restructuring responsibilities and immediate improvements, Jackson's phone buzzed. A text from Clara. City Journal article is live, trending already. He excused himself and stepped into the hallway, pulling up the story. The headline read, Undercover CEO exposes elitism at luxury boutique, Varon Studios wake-up call. The article detailed every step of the investigation, the confrontation, and the immediate action taken. But what it emphasized most was the speed, transparency, and moral clarity of the company's response. Already, it had been picked up by 2 local networks and shared thousands of times on social media. The comments flooded in. Finally, a CEO who walks the floor, not just a boardroom. Headed to Varon this weekend. This kind of leadership deserves support. This is what real accountability looks like. Even more powerful than the praise were the private emails being forwarded to Jackson's inbox. Dozens of customers who had once been turned away were now writing in, sharing their experiences, expressing their gratitude, and most of all, returning. Over 60 had already scheduled visits to nearby Varon locations. Many wrote that they were finally ready to give the brand a second chance. At 2 p.m., Jackson called an all-staff meeting on the showroom floor. Customers browsed freely now. There were mothers with daughters, college students with saved-up gift cards, and tourists with curiosity in their eyes. And the employees weren't rushing to filter them. They were approaching with respect, openness, and warmth. Yesterday, Jackson said, standing in the center of the boutique, we confronted a difficult truth. Today is about action. He paused, letting his voice carry. Every Varon Studio boutique, starting today, will implement a client respect protocol, a simple set of values that ensures every person who walks through our doors is treated with fairness, patience, and dignity. We will also be installing live feedback kiosks, where customer reviews go straight to corporate unfiltered. A murmur of approval moved through the staff. As he spoke, an older couple entered the boutique. The man wore worn denim overalls and a checkered shirt. His wife held his hand lightly. Kevin Liu stepped forward without hesitation. Welcome to Varon, he said with a genuine smile. How can we help you today? The man smiled back. Looking for a gift for our granddaughter. She's graduating college. Thought we'd get her something that makes her feel special. You came to the right place, Kevin said warmly, already guiding them toward the new arrival section. Jackson watched the scene unfold, a quiet satisfaction settling over him. This was it. Not marketing, not buzz, not the numbers on a dashboard. This was Varon Studio, and it was finally back where it belonged. By late afternoon, the Varon Studio flagship boutique was humming with energy, not the manicured, performative energy it once manufactured, but something honest, natural, and real. Customers filled the space. Young professionals, retirees, tourists, students. Some browsed the accessories wall with wide eyes. Others ran their fingers across carefully displayed fabrics. No one was asked for an appointment. No one was told to scan a QR code. And not once did a stylist glance at someone's shoes before deciding if they were worth a fitting. Sales were steady, but more than that, the atmosphere had changed. The boutique no longer felt like a showroom for status. It felt like a space for people. In the newly repurposed client experience office, Jackson stood by the window with Marcus Washington, watching his associates engage guests with sincere, welcoming gestures. At the front of the store, Kevin Liu assisted a young man choosing a shirt for a first date. Lisa Herrera offered styling advice to an elderly woman shopping for her granddaughter. Even the barista, previously reserved for platinum-tier shoppers, was chatting with a high school student sipping her first Varon-branded espresso. They're not just selling clothes today, Marcus said. They're earning something back. Jackson nodded. Trust. He turned his phone and opened the live feedback dashboard. Dozens of real-time reviews from customers across Varon locations were flowing in. Comments about how things felt different, more open, more human. A mother in San Francisco wrote about how her daughter had finally been treated like a customer, not a profile. A man in Austin said he'd walked into a boutique expecting judgment, but walked out with both a new blazer and his dignity intact. It wasn't just a local shift. The culture was rippling outward. Later that evening, Jackson convened a company-wide leadership call from a private meeting room in the boutique. On the screen, regional managers from across the country appeared, flanked by store leads and training staff. Yesterday, he began, we held up a mirror and didn't like what we saw. He let the silence settle before continuing. But today, we made a promise to be better, to do better. And that starts with more than just policies or slogans. It starts with people. He paced slowly, just as he had during presentations when Varen first went national. We're launching a new initiative, the Varen Welcome Standard. It will become a required training protocol at all locations, with real accountability. That means every associate, from greeter to stylist to store manager, will be empowered and expected to treat every guest with the respect they deserve. He paused and gestured to the screen. No more profiling. No more code-worded client tags. No more hidden practices. And no more waiting for a scandal to do what's right. He tapped on the presentation remote, revealing a slide. Transparency. Inclusion. Dignity. 3 words, big enough to become more than a tagline. Clear enough to anchor a company culture. From the screen, regional managers began to nod. A few clapped softly. Others unmuted just long enough to say, about time. But the most powerful moment came minutes later on the showroom floor. Jackson had stepped out to observe the final rounds of customer interactions. He moved quietly, taking in the new life being breathed into space. A middle-aged woman entered the store alone, dressed in modest clothes. She hesitated just inside the doorway, as if uncertain she belonged. Kevin Liu noticed her immediately. Welcome to Varen, he said warmly, stepping forward with no hesitation. Can I help you find something today? She blinked, then smiled. My daughter's getting promoted. I want her to feel confident. Kevin grinned. Let's find her something perfect. No status check. No labels. Just service. Jackson watched it happen, then turned back toward the center of the floor. Around him, staff engaged, listened, and helped. No one played gatekeeper, and not a single person reached for a label printer marked Platinum Only. This was no longer the boutique that had pushed people out. It was becoming the place that welcomed them in. And Jackson knew the hardest part wasn't changing the rules. It was changing the hearts behind them. By the end of the week, the Varen Studio flagship boutique had logged its highest foot traffic in over a year. But no one talked about sales goals. No one cited margins. What they talked about, what they felt, was something more powerful. Restoration. Employees smiled not because they were trained to, but because they wanted to. Customers lingered not because they felt pressure to spend, but because they finally felt seen. The boutique, once a fortress of exclusivity, had been returned to its original purpose, a place where style met sincerity. Late Friday afternoon, Jackson West stood at the back of the boutique near the accessories lounge, sipping a coffee from the very same espresso bar that, just days ago, had been a symbol of exclusion. Now, the bar served everyone, students, grandparents, first-time shoppers. No velvet barrier, no whispered judgments. He watched as Kevin Liu, now officially client experience director, guided a teenage boy and his father through the suiting section. The boy beamed as Kevin adjusted the lapel of the blazer just slightly, then gave him a quiet thumbs up in the mirror. Across the floor, Lisa Herrera, promoted to sales floor manager, laughed with a group of young women trying on summer dresses for their friend's bridal shower. There was no pretense, just people helping people. Feels different now, said Marcus Washington, approaching from behind. Jackson nodded. Because it is. A few moments later, a familiar couple entered the store. The man wore worn denim, the woman a simple cotton blouse. Jackson recognized them instantly. The same couple Kevin had helped earlier that week, the ones shopping for their granddaughter's graduation. But now, their presence held a quiet confidence. They weren't scanning for approval. They were here with purpose. Kevin greeted them with the same warmth as before. She loved the handbag, the man said. Said it made her feel like she could walk into her first job with her head held high. Well then, Kevin smiled. We chose right. As they browsed, Jackson stepped over. Good to see you again, he said gently. The man hesitated, then extended a hand. You're the owner, aren't you? Jackson took the handshake. Just someone who believes good taste and good manners should go hand in hand. The man smiled. Last month, We were told this place wasn't for people like us. Today, it feels like a different world. Jackson glanced at Kevin, who was now helping another guest, and then back at the man. That's because of people like him. Not because of a title or money, but because of heart. As the couple moved on, Marcus turned to Jackson. We could have brought in new managers from corporate. You chose the people who've been overlooked. Jackson shrugged. Sometimes the ones we overlook are the ones who best understand what it means to be invisible. He paused, then walked to the center of the boutique, where staff were wrapping up the day. He called for their attention. I want to leave you with something before I go, he began. This week reminded me of something we often forget in business, and maybe in life, too. He looked around the room, his eyes landing on each face, from the most senior stylist to the newest intern. We founded this brand to make people feel powerful in what they wear. But real power doesn't come from a label. It comes from how we treat each other, from the way we look at someone and choose, deliberately, not to judge, but to serve with grace. He let the silence hold for a beat. There will always be pressure to chase numbers, to segment customers, to optimize. But no strategy is ever worth it if it costs us our integrity. And no sale is worth more than a person's dignity. He stepped back, his voice quieter now, but no less steady. In fashion, as in life, we don't rise by stepping over others. We rise by lifting them up. That's how you build something that lasts. A hush settled over the boutique. Some staff nodded. Others blinked away, quiet emotion. Jackson smiled one last time. And one last thing. Remember this the next time someone walks through those doors. Treat them like they own the place. Because one day they just might. He turned, walking once more to the boutique. Not as a CEO, not as a mystery shopper, but as a man who had watched his vision nearly lose its soul and had fought to get it back. As he exited, a young associate held the door open for him. Have a great evening, sir, she said, beaming. He paused. I already am. In a world obsessed with appearances, status, and segmentation, we must fight to remember that the highest standard isn't luxury, it's kindness. The true measure of a person or a company isn't what they offer to the elite, but how they honor the overlooked. In business, as in life, dignity is not a luxury. It's a birthright. If this story moved you, let us know what you felt. Have you ever been judged for how you look or stood up for someone who was? Drop a comment below. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more real stories that reveal the heart behind the headlines.